Why is that? Confusing. The projector appears to be non-responsive. Try. Yeah, I saw that. It says primary monitor will not project on screen, but I'm not using the primary monitor. Using HDMI. I'll try HDMI. That's super fun. My computer detected it. Interesting. Huh. Like it shows up on this monitor, but nothing on the projector. Oh, for the love of God. Okay. All right, give me 2 seconds here. Let's try one more thing here. Duplicate. Just nothing's working, eh? Super helpful. Everything works except the projector. Okay. Super fun. Let me just try calling IST and see if I can get that working. Hi, Alyssa. I am just in Tory Basement 45, and I am not able to get the projector. Oh, hang on. It just turned on. Finally. All right. I just needed to call you to scare it. No, that's everything. Okay, perfect. All right, thank you. Will do. Thanks. Bye. There we go. We just needed to threaten it, and then everything works. Okay, perfect. Or maybe it takes like 5 minutes for this projector to warm up. I don't know. Okay, let me throw my microphone on. So today, really straightforward kind of day. Just doing a little bit of kind of Q&A. If you have any questions, obviously for the few but faithful who are in the room, feel free to ask them or use the Slido to ask any questions you've got, whether it's, format of the final exam, content, any content questions, stuff you're unclear about. We won't have class on Wednesday because obviously we're done. We're done all of our content. We're done. We'll look over some example short answer questions. As we go through the week, I'm going to put up practice questions for you for the final exam as well. I just have not had a chance to get to that, so that is high on my list of things to do, is to make sure that you get that practice content and get a chance to do some practice questions and all of that fun stuff. So I do have a couple of short answer questions to kind of take a look at today that we can look at together. I'm actually just going to pull up Bear Tracks and double check the date of the final exam. I know I think I sent it out to everybody, but I just want to double check. And I mean, I guess if we go through this quickly, we'll be done early. But, what percentage of each chapter is on the exam? So we have a number of units, right? We have gendered patterns of work. We have managing work, new management techniques, unions, and stress and satisfaction. I will probably weigh like stress and satisfaction the least because we did it in an hour. So we went through that one really fast. So I'll kind of put the big stress on gendered patterns of work, managing work, and the new management techniques, with a few questions thrown in on those other ones as well. I don't know the exact percentages because I haven't written the exam yet. I'm still working on that. I can send a kind of breakdown, but just kind of think like gendered patterns of work, management technique, or managing work, new management techniques, they're going to be a little bit more weighted, and the other two, unions and stress and satisfaction, a little bit less because we went through them quite quickly. Okay, and I just wanted to look at my schedule just to make sure I know what I'm talking about. Oh, Bear Tracks. I love your two little floating balls. Okay. Oops, I'm in the wrong semester. Already looking ahead to next year. Okay, so, and the exam for 366, April 14th, so Monday, April 14th at 8:30 a.m. in this room, and you get an hour and a half to do it, so a little longer than average, but the format of the exam is the exact same and all that jazz. Okay, well, it looks like there aren't a ton of questions, so why don't I just get into kind of looking at what some of these short answers will look like, and we'll kind of go from there. And just a reminder, the final is non-cumulative, 30 multiple choice, 4 short answer questions, just like the other 2 midterms. So it's really a third midterm on this last bit of content. Okay, so from our this is on our gendered patterns of work kind of unit. This is a kind of question that you might get, right? And here, give it 2.5 here and 2.5 here. So define the idea of the male breadwinner, so that's basically the man stays at home while the man works while wife stays at home, right? And then the idea that a male wage will support an entire household, right? Those would be your 2 key things for male breadwinner, right? That's all you really need to say is something like that. And then what has been the impact on both men and women, right? For men, high stress, often long hours, right? High stress of being the sole provider. For women, their economic roles, when we had an idea of the male breadwinner, was quite restricted because, the expectation was when you got married and had children that you would then be at home, right? Which led to things like female economic dependence, right? Women were dependent on their husbands' wages to survive, and you get things like, it's difficult for, divorce is difficult because women don't have great economic prospects. So more chances for things like abuse and unhappy marriages and all that jazz. So, and for these, these 2, right, 2.5, and some combination of these things, right, you need to identify at least one thing for each. For men and women, 2.5 marks there. Okay. So, nothing crazy, nothing too difficult. Okay. Sorry, does that make sense to everybody that's here? Great. Perfect. Okay, so this one. Explain 2 principles of scientific management, right, for 2.5, and then where do we continue to see the legacy of Taylorism in modern workplaces? That one. Okay, so there's a bunch of these, right, when we think of of our our principles of scientific management, and you could just pick any two, right? So assume that workers are lazy and restricted output, right? The idea that people work as little as possible. They could work harder if they were properly motivated, but they don't because they want to do the minimum possible. They use time and motion studies to identify, one best way to do the job. Like this is this idea in Taylorism, right? You do these studies, you do kind of scientific experiments on workers to find the fastest, most efficient way to do things. Separated conception from execution, right? That you basically, rather than thinking about kind of an ideal, workplace, you actually study the execution, how things actually work in the real world, and you study that. Okay, and then scientific selection of workers and equipment, right? You do these time and motion studies, and you try to figure out who the best workers for certain kinds of jobs are, and all of that jazz. And you motivate workers with economic rewards, right? I think I've got one more, and you can put these two together. So you pay people, because these are two easy ones to go together, right? Because you think people are lazy, the way you get around that laziness is you pay them based on levels of production, right? So how much they produce will lead them to getting bonuses. So, you motivate them that way. Okay, where do we continue to see the legacy of Taylorism in modern workplaces? Here you could point to something like lean production, right? We talked about in new management techniques, right? Lean production is a form of like neo-Taylorism. So you can point either to Boeing, we talked about Boeing, or General Motors, where we had examples from both, right? So easy peasy, nothing too hard there. Oh, time and motion studies. For some reason that popped up out of order, right? Okay. Can you answer with bullet points like this and get full marks? As long as the information is complete, right? And obviously you see I'm writing some other things here, just to kind of add to it. And I'm saying other things. This is just a chart to kind of walk you through the answers. But if you have, for explain two principles, right, you'd have to, what is a time and motion study? Okay, explain that, right? I just explained it verbally. You'll have to do that. You can do it in point form if you want, but like what I have written here wouldn't get you full marks because there's no explanations here, right? I gave you the explanations verbally. So you can write bullet points. Just make sure that you, in this question, don't just identify two principles, like explain them, right? Okay. So, yes, brevity is good. Okay. Sorry, I'm assuming everyone's good with that. Okay. So, explain a key element of Japanese management techniques. And then how did these techniques enable Japanese companies to outperform American companies, right? Okay. So there's a couple of key elements, of Japanese management that we can talk about. So things like highly evolved internal labor markets, right? So what is that? Obviously Japanese companies like Toyota built these systems where you would work for the company your whole life, which would lead to loyalty. People had high loyalty, to the companies. They were company people. Okay. Probably easier than that, especially for that second part of the question, would be these two, right? Quality circles and just-in-time inventories. So we know what quality circles were, right? That's where, on a regular basis, people who are part of a process like an assembly line at a company like Toyota stand around in a circle and they talk about any problems they are experiencing on the production line, any potential flaws they see in the product, and they kind of work with management to get that addressed. Okay, how did this technique enable Japanese companies to outperform American ones? Right, very simply, say in the case of something like Toyota, the products coming out of those companies were of higher quality and had less defects than their American counterparts. So they gained a reputation for quality and people wanted to buy them, right? So Japanese cars, a company like Toyota became the largest car maker in the world because of its reputation for extremely high quality with very few defects, right? So that's probably, on a question like this, that would probably be the easiest one, right? Because it's the most straightforward. Just-in-time inventories, right? Again, you'd have to explain just-in-time inventories, right? Rather, we're talking about pull logistics, rather than stocking a bunch of parts, and keeping them in a warehouse, hoping that you're going to use them one day to build a car. You only pull from, suppliers the parts you need at this particular moment. So you get, and here is probably the easiest thing, right? Less overhead costs. Less overhead, more efficient, less waste. And, simpler logistics. Okay, right? And more efficient, right? It's all managed by computers, computer stock systems or computer logistics systems. So it's all more efficient, right? And they waste less money. They're more efficient. Their overheads are higher and all of that kind of stuff. Okay, so that's a really pretty straightforward. Does that make sense? Right? Again, really straightforward, and keep in mind when you're answering this question, I'll probably write one if I use a question like this. You just have to identify one thing. So if you pick quality circles, just say what a quality circle is, explain it, and how Japanese companies used it to outperform their American counterparts. Good? Okay. We're almost done. What is the free rider problem and what challenges does it pose to unions? Right, a free rider problem. Pretty straightforward, the definition. So you explain, and again, this would be like, this is straightforward, 2.5 and 2.5 marks out of 5. So free rider problem. Members of a group get benefits of the group's efforts, but don't contribute any effort to generate those benefits, right? So, if you want to use the union example specifically, there's going to be a small number of union members that do all of the work to negotiate contracts, to organize, to strike and picket, and all of that stuff. And there's a bunch of lazy union members that don't do any of those things, but still get the benefits, right? So that's the second part, right? What challenges does it pose for unions? A minority of union members actually contribute to the union, thus, and organizing and negotiating are left to that minority, which may get burnt out or exhausted, right? They will eventually get tired of doing things for everyone else. And that's it. There's nothing, not a super complex question. Nothing too crazy, just pretty straightforward. Okay. And I think this is my, last one for this. And I'll post a few more as I go through and create the practice questions. I will create a few more, probably one more for each unit. Practice short answer questions. So you can have a look at some more. And this is, this exam review is posted on, like, the PowerPoint and the PDF are posted on Canvas. The video is up on the YouTube channel if you want to review any of it or anything like that. Okay. Again, pretty straightforward. What are the best measures of job satisfaction according to researchers, and why? Again, 2.5 marks. Oops. Eraser. So, when we talked about it in job satisfaction, right? Most job satisfaction is measured in surveys, in questions like overall, how satisfied are you with your job? But, they say that is not super accurate because of, if we want to talk the why. So behaviors, what's the best measure? Behaviors such as striking, quitting, absenteeism are the best measure of job satisfaction because they show how people really feel about the job and why. Okay, so survey questions can be flawed, right, depending on which options are there. In the example I gave in class, right, adding neither satisfied nor dissatisfied changes the dynamics of the question, and you get 14 to 22% choosing neither, right, that they're not satisfied or dissatisfied with their jobs. If you didn't have that option, right, people would choose either dissatisfied or satisfied. So it changes the dynamics. And most workers, have very few options, in terms of work. And so they show their dissatisfaction in how they act at work rather than, how they answer a survey question. Oh, you could also add, striking, quitting, absenteeism You could add stealing if you want. Stealing from the company is another possibility that you could add there. Okay, so that, I mean, like I said, these are pretty straightforward questions. You just kind of need to know the material. I know there's a lot of it. We did a lot of units in the back half of the course, or the back third of the course rather, since March 14th. That is a really quick burn through this back part of the course. But that is where we are. Okay. I mean, that's it. That's all I got for today, right? If you have any other questions, you can ask them. Otherwise, you're free to go. And those who didn't come, you're free to stay wherever you are right now and watch the video or do whatever you want. I'll hang around until everyone leaves if you want to ask other questions in person. Other than that, we'll see you on the exam date. Am I teaching any spring summer courses? I am teaching 3 spring classes. I am teaching Sociology of Youth, SOS 377, Sociology of Christianity, which is SOS 2, or so not SOS, CHRTC 203. That one's on. So youth is in person, Monday, Wednesday from 1 till 4. CHRTC 203 is online, asynchronous. And then I'm teaching a SOS 100, so Introductory Sociology, online as well. That one is currently full, but I think the other 2 still have spaces in them. And I'm not in the summer. I guess I have 1 class in the summer, which is an asynchronous class, which is CHRTC 241, Catholicism and Pop Culture, online and async. Oh, thank you. You're very kind. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I do my best to make what I know can be a dry course. And I blame engineering for that because they're the ones who tell us what we have to teach in this class. We could offer anything to engineers, but engineering's like, we want this course to be on work. And I'm like, okay. I know the material can get a little dry sometimes, but I try to tell you the horror stories of my life at Enterprise to make you feel better about your lives when you hopefully don't get a job like that. I will try. I think I will have time because now my schedule opens up. Oh, thank you. You're very welcome, and thank you for the compliment. All right. Well, I will stay here and take your compliments until they stop coming. I'll try to post answers for the short answers if I have time. Other than that, it's been fun. Have fun being engineers and making fabulous amounts of money because your jobs are scalable and mine's not. All right, we'll see you on exam day. Oh, that's sweet. Thank you. That's so kind. You'd never know it from the 10 people that attend class every day. Thank you. Have a good one. You too. All right.